Now the data template dialog comes up. The first thing to look at over on the right is the preview. Right now, if I were to click OK, I would see all of these fields for each one of my products. This is not what I want, so over in the data template field, I can see the different properties. I could, if I needed to, select one of the properties and use the up or down buttons to rearrange their order, and you can see the image changing its position in the preview. In this case, however, the only field I'm really interested in is the name. So I'm going to uncheck the other fields, so my list box only contains the name. To the right of the name, it shows that it's going to create a text block to represent my name. If I wanted to, I could expand that to tell Blend to use an image, a label, or even controls like a button to display that property. I'm satisfied with the text block, so I'm going to leave it as is. I'm going to press OK, and now my list box is populated with the names of the different products that I have. When I press F5 to run my project, you'll see that I've got a list box, and I can click and select any one of those products. Now let's get the rest of the information. In order to bind the rest of the information, the easiest way to do it is to create a layout container and bind the data context of that layout container to the selected item. I'm going to choose a grid, and I'm going to add a grid to my project. I'm going to double-click my grid to make it the activated element so that everything I add from here on out becomes a child of that grid. In the Properties Inspector, I'm going to bind the data context of my grid to the selected element of the list box. Now what does this mean? The data context for a layout container means that that layout container is associated with a single piece of data. In this case, I'm binding the data context to the specific product that the user has selected in the list box on the left. I'm going to use my property marker and choose Data Binding. The data binding dialog comes up, and this is the first time we've seen it, so I want to explain a few things. At the top, there are three tabs: Data Field, Element Property, and Explicit Data Context. Data Field would allow us to bind to a data source, but since we've already bound the list box to a data source, this isn't the field I'm looking for. The Element Property allows me to bind one of my properties to match one of the other properties. We're going to use the element property right now. The left field, Scene Elements, shows me the tree that, if you look, matches what I see in the object tree in the main application. I'm going to choose my list box, and now in the right field are the properties on the list box. When I scroll down in that list, I'll eventually find Selected Item. Now when I press Finish, the data context for my grid is associated with the selected item in the list box. Now, since the grid doesn't display anything itself, this isn't too useful, but let's create a control inside the grid to display our data.